डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर ओपन युनिव्हर्सिटी.
Namaskar and greetings of the day to all the students watching this video. I, Twinkle Chandarana, Assistant Professor English, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, welcome all of you in today's lecture. So friends, you might be wondering about the topic to be discussed in today's session. Well, today we are going to discuss an interesting play titled as a tragicomedy in 2 acts, along with the themes and characterization in the play. Let us discuss the themes of this play. To start with, let us have a look at the humor and absurd. And before that, make me introduce you to the components of this presentation. It includes the objectives, the themes, the characterization. Check your progress and references as well as web resources in this slides and in this lecture. The objectives includes to give a broad understanding of the play by interweaving the essence of the play with the underlying major themes, and to introduce all of you to the characters of the play in an overall textual and analytical approach, and also to enable all of you to approach and analyze the play from holistic perspective. Let us start with the humor and absurd elements in this play. Waiting for Godot is a prime example of what has come to be known as the theatre of the absurd. The play is filled with nonsensical lines, wordplay, meaningless dialogue, and characters who abruptly shift emotions and forget everything, ranging from their own identities to what happened yesterday. All of this contributes to an absurdist humor throughout the play. However, this humor is often uncomfortably mixed together with tragic or serious content to make a darker kind of comedy. The character of Estragon is one of the important characters of this play, and it refers to billion of others who have been killed and describes being beaten by an anonymous they. Lucky, who is also one of the important characters of this play, whose ill-fitting name is itself darkly comic, is treated horribly and physically abused on stage, and Vladimir, who is also an important character in this play. He is also talking with Estragon and nonchalantly and pleasantly about the suicide and everything else. All this has a discomforting effect on the audience, who is not sure how to react to this absurd mixture of comedy and tragedy, seriousness and playfulness. In Act 1, Vladimir says one dare not even laugh anymore, and his comment could apply aptly well to the audience of Becquet's play, who don't know whether to laugh or to cringe at the events on the stage. The absurdity caused by the seeming mismatch between characters' tones and the content of their speech can be seen as a reaction to a world emptied of the meaning and significance. If the world is meaningless, it makes no sense to see it as comic or tragic and good or bad. Becquet thus presents an awry play that sits uneasily on the border between tragedy and comedy, in territory one can only call the absurd. So friends, this was all about the first theme. Let's move to the second theme, which is waiting, boredom and nihilism. As Becquet's title indicates, the central act of the play is waiting, and one of the most salient aspects of the play is that nothing really seems to happen. Both Vladimir and Estragon, they are bored to death, and both Vladimir and Estragon repeat throughout the play that there is nothing to be done and nothing to do. They spend the entire play waiting for Godot. Estragon repeatedly wants to leave, but Vladimir insists that they stay in case Godot actually shows up. As a result of this endless waiting, both Vladimir and Estragon are bored to death, as Vladimir himself puts it. Both Vladimir and Estragon repeat throughout the same thing throughout the play, that there is nothing to be done, and the phrase nothing to do. They struggle to find ways to pass the time, so they end up conversing back and forth about nothing at all, including talking about how they don't know what to talk about and simply to occupy them while waiting. The boredom of the characters on stage mirrors the boredom of the audience as well. Beke has deliberately constructed a play where not only his characters but also his audience waits, and for something that never happens. Just like Estragon and Vladimir, the audience also equally waits during the play for some major event or climax that never occurs. Audience members might at times feel uncomfortable and want, like Estragon, to leave, but are bound to stay in case Godot should actually arrive later in the play. All of this waiting for nothing, talking about nothing, and doing nothing contributes to a pervasive atmosphere of nihilism in the play. Broadly defined, nihilism is a denial of any significance or meaning in the world, deriving from the Latin word for nothing, that is nihil. It is a worldview centered around negation, claiming that there is no truth, morality, value, or in an extreme form, even reality in this world. This seems to describe the world of the play, largely emptied out of meaning, emotion, and substance, leading to characters who blather on endlessly in insignificant conversation. Given the play's deep exploration of the absurd humor and feelings of alienation that arise from this nihilistic understanding of the world, one could say that Waiting for Godot is at its core about nothing. Having discussed the second theme, let us now move to the third theme titled as Humanity, Companionship, Suffering, and Dignity in the Play. Beke's play is filled with a great deal of physical, mental, and emotional suffering, and it has a dehumanizing effect and robs the characters of their dignity. Vladimir and Estragon desperately seek two things throughout the play, that is, some recognition of their humanity and companionship, and in this environment where people are so easily forgotten, Vladimir wants some confirmation of his own identity and humanity. They both are starved for food, they are in physical pain, and they both are bored to death. Both fear an anonymous they who threaten to beat them at night and frequently unable to move of their own accord. Estragon mentions billions of others, and they don't want to elaborate on the same. And the portrait of the daily life painted by Waiting for Godot is a dismal one. It is repetitive and stagnant. Meanwhile, both of them are horribly treated, pulled about by a rope tied around in his neck, and they are in the process even kicked and repeatedly. All of this suffering has a dehumanizing effect, and Lucky, for example, is addressed by Pozo as pig and treated like a pack animal, and Estragon is reduced to sucking on Pozo's leftover chicken bones pathetically, and even Pozo, who imposes suffering on Lucky, is unable to get up from the ground when he falls in Act 2. Amid all this, Vladimir and Estragon desperately seek two things throughout the play, that is, from the title itself we can make out. that is some recognition of their humanity and companionship. And when the boy asks Vladimir what message he would like to send to Godo, then at that time he simply asks the boy to tell Godo that he saw Vladimir, and in other words, Vladimir wants to be acknowledged as a person. This is particularly important to him because the other characters in the play forget and mix up their identities, and Pozzo and Lucky don't recognize Estragon and Vladimir in Act 2, whereas Estragon forgets about Lucky and Pozzo. In this environment where people are so easily forgotten, Vladimir wants some confirmation on his own identity and humanity, and beyond this, Vladimir and Estragon also desire companionship. Although Estragon repeatedly suggests that they should go to their separate ways, the two stay together out of a mutual fear of loneliness, and when Estragon momentarily leaves the stage, Vladimir panics and becomes immediately lonely, and Estragon needs Vladimir as well as other to have someone to talk to and ask questions of, or to help him put on his boots. Nonetheless, even as Vladimir and Estragon seek some kind of dignity and companionship in the face of suffering, they are remarkably indifferent to the suffering of others. Vladimir is at first outraged at Pozzo's treatment of Lucky, but soon gets used to it and even encourages Estragon to kick him. Vladimir and Estragon converse nonchalantly while Pozzo is stuck on the ground and crying for help in Act 2. And they first scheme show how they might take advantage of him rather than help him. And Vladimir and Estragon value their own relationship but generally fail to sympathize with Pozzo and Lucky as other potential companions. Becquet suggests that this kind of indifference to the pain of others is what allows the vicious circle of suffering to continue on indefinitely as it is in the play. And the portrait of daily life painted in the play Waiting for Godot is a dismal one. It is repetitive and stagnant, and it lacks meaning and purpose and entails perpetual suffering. The solutions which none of the characters take would seem to be action and choice despite the ever presence of uncertainty and an awareness of one's surroundings and past actions. As one character says that, I quote, habit is a great deadener, unquote. Our actions should stem from conscious choice rather than apathy. Friends, let us now move forward towards the discussion of the one of the most important themes in this play, and that is modernism and postmodernism depicted in the play. Written in 1953, Waiting for Godot was a somewhat late successor to the vibrant experimentation in art and literature of the late 19th and early 20th centuries known as modernism. Modernist writers saw themselves as dramatically breaking with the past and innovating in all aspects of art, literature, and culture. Becquet's play shares with modernist works a fascination with pushing the boundaries of literary genre, representation, and etiquettes, as well as an interest in language and thought, prioritized above action and plot. However, the play can also be seen as somewhat postmodern too, belonging to the literary and artistic period following modernism. Both modernism and postmodernism are rather vague terms, often used differently by different critics, and moreover, it is also debated whether postmodernism continues the aspirations of modernism or is a more radical break with it. In any case, Becquet's play sits on the fence between these two movements, and while postmodernism is difficult to define exactly, Waiting for Godot displays a number of the defining features of a postmodern conception of the world. And one of these is an alienation from tradition and a questioning of the grand narratives that were previously seen to have some kind of authority. These includes grand narratives of historical progress, that history is the story of human life, continually getting better, as well as religious narratives like the Bible. There are some biblical and classical references in the play, but they are only used ironically. Here, Estragon compares himself to Christ in one act, and for example, but the comparison is rather ridiculous. And Pozo invokes Atlas, son of Jupiter, but does not actually believe in the force of this classical reference. And what's more, he gets his mythological family tree wrong. The religious and cultural traditions of the past have lost their authority and centrality in the world of the play, and another postmodern feature of the play is a pervasive sense of entrapment or enslavement, but a lack of any central authority. Characters are often unable to move or get up from the ground for no apparent reason. And here, Vladimir and Estragon are in a sense trapped in their place of waiting, even though no one is forcing them to stay. Pozo is Lucky's master, but he is far from free or powerful. Everyone in the play seems to be trapped or enslaved in some or the other way, but no one seems to be the master. Let us now discuss the major characters of this play. To start the discussion, let us discuss the first character, that is the character of Estragon. At times, the characters don't even know who they are, and Estragon cannot remember his own past. For example, finally, some of Beke's characters feel a separation from reality, and both Vladimir and Pozo question in Act 2 whether they are actually awake or are simply dreaming. This confusion of reality with a dream or a false representation is a central common feature of Estragon is rather helpless on his own way, and in the beginning of the play, he struggles just to take off his boots, for example, and unlike Vladimir, he has no grasp of time and is confused as to whether it is evening or morning in Act 2. Along the similar lines, he has a poor grasp of people's identities. He does not recognize Lucky, and in the play, he is also seen as and at a point he also thinks that Pozo's name is Abel. He cannot even remember his own past and tells Pozo his name is Adam. Estragon repeatedly wants to leave, but each time Vladimir reminds him that they must stay and wait for Godot. While he often forms the dull-minded counterpoint to the more cerebral Vladimir, Estragon is still able to match Vladimir's verbal wit and once claims that he used to be a poet. The second important character of the play to be discussed is Vladimir. Perhaps the real protagonist of the play, Vladimir often seems to be more rational than his more nonsensical companion, Estragon, and in this way, he is a bit different from the other characters in this play. Unlike the other characters in the play, he has a sense of linear time and realizes that the events of Act 2 essentially repeat those of Act 1. He is also able to remember people's identities, unlike Estragon and Pozo, and he is also a bit different from the other characters as we have discussed because he is not who forgets each other in Act 2. He seems to be the only one who is really outraged at Pozo's horrible treatment of Lucky in Act 1, but he does not actually do anything to help him. Vladimir often tries to explain what is going on in the world where they are and when they are and to show evidence to support his theories. But such rational or scientific efforts never yield any solid insight, and by the end of the play, Vladimir seems less sure than he did at the beginning of the play. Vladimir relies upon Estragon's company as much as Estragon relies upon Vladimir. Whenever Estragon leaves the stage for a brief moment, Vladimir panics out of his intense fear of loneliness and abandonment. The third fictional character to be discussed here is, from the title itself, Godot. While Godot never appears on stage or has any lines, he is such a significant absence in the play that he may be rightly recognized as one of the play's characters. What little we can gather about Mr. Godot comes from the dialogues of the character, that is Estragon, and that what we come to know from his dialogues is that Godot is one such character which, though he never appears on the stage, but has an important role to play in the play. He sends to deliver his message, and the boy that he watches over Godot's goats and describes Godot as a relatively kind master. Whoever Godot is, Vladimir and Estragon are convinced that he alone will save them, so they wait endlessly for his arrival, which never comes. Because of his name's resemblance to God, Godot is often read as Beke's pessimistic version of God and an absent savior who never comes to the aid of those suffering on earth. This was all about Godot, and the fourth character of the play who plays an equally important role is Pozo. Pozo runs along Vladimir and Estragon while journeying along the road in both the acts, and equally he abuses Lucky and treats him as a slave, and pulling him around with a rope tied around his neck and having him carry all his things. While he exercises some relative power and authority over Lucky and acts superior to the other characters, he is nonetheless far from powerful himself. He panics when he loses things like his watch and is doomed to repeat his wandering every day, just as Vladimir and Estragon repeat their waiting for Godot. Pozo is particularly helpless in Act 2 when he is inexplicably stuck blind and is unable to get up after falling on the ground. And the last but not the least, we have the character of Lucky. Lucky is Pozo's slave, whom Pozo treats horribly and continually insults, addressing him only as a pig. He is mostly silent in the play but gives a lengthy, mostly nonsensical monologue in Act 1 when Pozzo asks him to think out loud. While all the characters on stage suffer in different ways throughout the play, Lucky is the play's most obvious figure of physical suffering and exploitation as he is whipped, beaten, and kicked by other characters. So, friends, this was about the characters and themes that we have discussed. Let us now see towards the questions and check your progress. What are the major themes? The first question is, what are the major themes presented in the play? And the second question is, write a detailed note on the art of characterization in the play. And list the major characters of the play along with their trait personality. And here are enlisted some of the references as well as web resources which you can refer to for your better understanding on these topics. Thank you, dear friends, for listening, and I hope you have very well understood today's topics.
स्वाध्यायः परः